Yeah.
Yeah,
So
with the American withdrawal, Biden got a lot of crap, but Trump didn't want to pull out because he didn't want to deal with the day of the pullout. Same with Obama. So this is a scab that we needed to rip off, and we can argue about how if could we have done it better, and maybe. But we always knew the Afghan government was going to collapse shortly after we left. Now, we didn't think it was going to be the second after we left. We thought they might last a year.
mm,
No one thought it was going to last two.
yeah.
So I don't think it's going to pull us back in. I mean, TBD, but the pullout is pretty much complete. We've got a couple hundred special forces running around Syria. Their time is limited, and as soon as they're gone, there is no reason to consider that the CENTCOM base in Qatar needs to be there anymore because it's
Mm.
not doing anything. It should be back in the United States. The last big thing that they did was do security briefs for the World Cup, and I'm sorry, that is not worthy of CENTCOM's attention. Uh, so we don't even have carriers that are in the Gulf regular anymore because we are now completely energy independent again. And we are the world's largest exporter of refined products. So the energy argument for being involved is no longer there.
Mm.
In this sort of environment, the Iranians have done wonders in leveraging the American position to rile up sectarian groups throughout the region to overthrow governments and cause general chaos. That has generated an ongoing backlash with the Saudis now in the fray because they realize the Americans aren't going to fight their wars for them. But whereas the Iranians ultimately want to use these minority groups to get control, the Saudis don't care about what it looks like so long as the Iranians lose. So they have been willing to use terror groups and militant groups to just burn down everything to its foundation. You get two groups, one that wants to overthrow the majority, and then one that counts itself as the representative to the majority, just wants to destroy everything.
Mm.
This is going to end badly. Uh, the two scenarios to consider, number one is a straight up slugfest between the two powers that put half of all maritime transported oil in the crosshairs in between them.
Mm.
That'd be bad. Option two is the two of them basically engage in rising proxy conflicts that destroy every country in Mesopotamia,
Mm.
most notably Iraq. No matter how that goes down, you get a big hit to energy supplies, and the country that is at the very end of the energy kick chain is China, and they're the ones who will have to suck up the majority of the loss. They
Okay.
are the problem with oil. Well, the problem with natural gas is you can't redirect it at all. You have to have specialized shipment systems, and if the pipes aren't there, it just goes offline. And that is the case that we're seeing with natural gas. Oil's a little bit more flexible because
Mm.
it's a liquid, but the time it would take to build infrastructure from the Western Siberian fields that used to supply the Europeans
Okay.
to the coast of China, that's a 15, 20-year project that would cost over $100 billion.
Wow.
We're talking China, we're talking Russia. These are countries not intimidated by the concept of scale, but you don't do that fast.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is tankers taking crude from the Baltic and the Black Sea ports, going west at some point, either in the Atlantic or the Mediterranean, taking these small shuttle tankers and reloading them onto super tankers, and then sailing around Africa and India and Vietnam to get to China. And the volume that is going that way is about a million, maybe 1.5 million barrels a day, with another roughly million going to India.
Okay.
A couple problems here. Number one is insurance, and don't get bored. This will be quick and it's interesting. Uh, every reinsurance company in the world has said they will no longer cover any Russian cargo.
Mm.
So the only companies that will insure it are state companies from India and China who have never insured anything before. And so the first time we have an incident where we have an insurance payout, it's going to go directly into international arbitration, and that will take years. And at that point, no one will want to get an Indian or Chinese insurance policy anymore.
Wow.
Uh, Russian pressure will build up in the pipes from the export point all the way back to the fields,
Mm.
and most of this crude comes from the permafrost. And if for whatever reason the pressure backs up to the well will seal shut because the oil will coagulate into a gel, and the water that comes up as a byproduct will freeze into water. And the water, when water freezes into ice, it expands and it pops the wells from the inside.
Okay.
And that's all she wrote. And we lose 3-4 million barrels a day of Russian crude. So not only are the Chinese now getting oil from twice as far away as they normally did, which was already the most risky energy transport route in history. They're now getting it from a supply system that is eminently unstable, and it is going to break down sooner or later. And they're still picking a fight with the United States, which controls the security of this route. So it doesn't matter really at this point which piece of the system breaks. The Chinese are the ones that lose all of it. When I say Hail Mary, it's not that I think they can win. One of the things to remember about the Ukraine war is that the Russians get what they're after, which is a more securable exterior crustal defense. They actually do buy themselves some more time.
Mm-hmm.
There's nowhere that the Chinese can conquer that buys them time. So the only reason that the Chinese would launch a war is to try to preemptively remove Japan and Taiwan from the equation, maybe Vietnam too, or if they're like me and they believe that they're facing economic and agricultural and financial and political and demographic breakdown, and they know that the end is nigh anyway, picking the time and the place of the fight so that at home you can write the narrative of the national defeat, that might be enough for the CCP to retain control as the country collapses.
Wow.
Maybe. So, basically fight a war, and for the low, low price of 500 million dead countrymen, you're still in charge. That they're still there. I mean, I was probably among the most optimistic people for the Ukrainians because they have done a lot in the last 8 years since the Donbass war to build up a military and establish a sense of identity and politically unify the country. They've made some real gains. But I didn't think they were going to last a year, much less all of a sudden, I don't want to call it a peer conflict. It's not, but to, be in the same class. This should not have happened. The Ukrainians have overperformed by every possible measure. The Europeans have stepped up to the plate in a way that I didn't think they were capable of. The Americans have joined in, and I thought with European feckleness and general disinterest from Obama and Trump and Biden that we wouldn't get involved. And then, of course, most of all, the Russians have just proven to plumb the depths and the frontiers of incompetence in every possible military field. It took that combination of things for Ukraine to still be in the game. I hope it continues, but this is still Russia's war to lose. No, there have been 8 negotiated settlements with the Russians, and they just wait a few months to a year or two, and then they push on. It gives the Russians time to consolidate and move on. Remember that when the Soviet system existed, they controlled every one of the access points to the Eurasian plain where the Russian heartlands are. It was the most secure that the Russians had ever been. They had spent 350 years building that exterior position, and they finally got it in 1945. 1992, they lost all but one of those access points. And everything that Moscow has done, not just Putin, everything that Moscow has done